Mornings in the Miller household had become rehearsed performances, quiet, efficient, and painfully polite. Ethan Miller stood by the kitchen counter, pouring coffee into two identical mugs. Across the room, his husband, Daniel, scrolled through emails, phone lighting the tired creases under his eyes. The sound of the coffee machine filled the silence between them, steady, mechanical, safe. "Did you sleep?" Daniel asked without looking up. "A little," Ethan replied, his voice as mild as the gray light creeping through the curtains. Daniel nodded, still typing. "I'll be home late again. The new campaign's a mess." Ethan smiled faintly, though the muscles in his face protested the effort. "I'll keep dinner light." It was the kind of exchange that married people could perform in their sleep, affection shaped like obligation, routine mistaken for stability. Daniel leaned in briefly, kissed Ethan's temple, and left with a faint scent of aftershave and distance. The door closed softly, and the house fell into the kind of quiet that didn't feel like peace anymore. Ethan looked around the kitchen: white tiles, stainless steel, spotless counters. It was a house built for guests, not for living. The silence pressed against him, reminding him of how little warmth lingered after Daniel was gone. He rinsed his cup, glanced out the window, and paused. A moving van had pulled up next door. Two men were unloading boxes while a third directed them, a man about his age, tall, lean, with dark hair that curled at the edges. He wore a faded green t-shirt and an easy smile, the kind of expression that made conversation feel inevitable. Ethan watched longer than he meant to, caught by the casual confidence in the stranger's movements. By the time he realized he was staring, the man had looked up and caught his gaze. Their eyes met through the glass, just a second too long to be polite. Then the man grinned and waved. Ethan blinked, startled, and lifted his hand in return. The moment passed, but something small shifted inside him, a faint spark where numbness had been. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. New neighbors always stirred interest, especially in a quiet street where everyone already knew one another's routines. Still, as he turned away, the thought lingered. That smile had felt like sunlight after too long indoors. Later that day, as he trimmed the hedges outside, the new neighbor appeared again, closer this time. "Hey," the man said, leaning over the fence with a friendly nod. "I'm Liam. Just moved in." "Ethan," he replied, brushing dirt from his hands. "Welcome to Maple Lane." Liam's eyes flicked toward the neatly kept yard. "You must be the one keeping the neighborhood this tidy. Good to know someone here cares about plants." Ethan chuckled, surprised by how easily the sound escaped. "It keeps me busy." They talked for a few minutes, small things, harmless. Where Liam had moved from, how quiet the street seemed, the best coffee place nearby. His voice had a warmth that drew Ethan in, as if he'd been waiting for someone who actually listened. When Liam excused himself to get back to unpacking, Ethan found himself wanting to ask more questions, to keep the moment going. He didn't. He just watched as Liam walked back toward his house, the late afternoon sun catching the curve of his neck, the easy rhythm of his stride. Inside, Ethan sat by the window, pretending to read. The pages blurred. His thoughts refused to settle. That evening, Daniel returned home late, tie loosened, exhaustion radiating from him. He ate silently, eyes on his phone, while Ethan's mind wandered next door, to the laughter he'd heard faintly through the walls as Liam hosted someone for dinner. Daniel looked up once. "You okay?" Ethan blinked, forced a smile. "Yeah. Just tired." When Daniel kissed him goodnight, it felt like habit again, not desire. After he fell asleep, Ethan stood by the window, the glow from Liam's house casting faint shadows across their garden. He could see movement, Liam talking animatedly on the phone, barefoot, relaxed. Ethan knew he shouldn't be watching. But he did. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was longing for something unnamed. Whatever it was, it made him linger, heart steady but not still. When the lights next door went out, Ethan finally turned away. In the reflection of the darkened glass, he saw his own face, calm, composed, and deeply unfamiliar. He whispered into the silence, as if confessing to himself, "I didn't know that something so simple could feel like danger." The following week unfolded with a quiet predictability. Daniel's hours at the office stretched longer, and Ethan filled the time with tasks that gave his hands purpose but left his mind restless. He trimmed hedges already neat, rearranged books on shelves, and brewed coffee he barely tasted. Yet, between each routine, his thoughts wandered next door. Liam, the name lingered like a tune caught in memory. One afternoon, as Ethan returned from a short walk, he found Liam crouched beside his front steps, coaxing a stubborn lock into place with a screwdriver. Sweat beaded along his temple, his shirt clinging slightly to his back. "Need a hand?" Ethan asked, trying to sound casual. Liam looked up, grin flashing. "Only if you know something about ancient door locks. This thing's seen better decades." Ethan knelt beside him, the faint scent of metal and pine filling the space between them. Together, they twisted and tightened until the bolt finally clicked into place. "Victory," Liam said, laughing softly. "Coffee to celebrate?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, I could use one." Inside Liam's house, boxes were half open, clothes draped over chairs, books scattered on the floor. It was lived in chaos, a sharp contrast to Ethan's orderly home. Yet, it felt warm, real. The air carried the faint smell of cedar and roasted beans. Liam handed him a cup. "No sugar, right? You seem like the no-sugar type." Ethan smiled, surprised. "Lucky guess." "Not luck," Liam said, settling into a chair. Observation. Their conversation meandered easily, from music to travel to small-town oddities. Liam spoke with the kind of openness that invited trust. He had a way of looking directly at someone, not through them. Ethan found himself talking more than usual, about Daniel's long hours, his own design work, the way time had started to feel heavy lately. "You ever feel," Ethan said slowly, "like you're living a life you didn't choose but can't step out of?" Liam tilted his head. "Every day, before I moved here." Their eyes met for a heartbeat too long, and Ethan felt something stir, an awareness that frightened him as much as it thrilled. A phone buzzed on the table. Ethan glanced down. "Daniel, hey," he said, answering. "Yeah, I'll pick up the dry cleaning. Don't worry." His voice softened automatically, shaped by habit. When he hung up, the spell broke, but not completely. "Your husband?" Liam asked gently. Ethan nodded. "Always working." "Seems like you are, too," Liam said. "Working to keep everything together." Ethan didn't answer. He just stared into his coffee, the dark surface trembling slightly. The afternoon faded into gold. When Ethan finally stood to leave, Liam followed him to the door. "You should come by again," he said, almost an afterthought. "I make better coffee once I unpack the rest." Ethan smiled. "Maybe I will." And he did. Over the next week, their paths crossed naturally, at the mailbox, the garden fence, the local cafe. Each encounter stretched a little longer. Liam's humor disarmed him, his warmth filled the spaces Daniel no longer noticed. Conversations grew more personal. Ethan learned that Liam painted in the evenings, that he'd left a long-term relationship that had stopped feeling like home. Ethan didn't ask for details, but he understood the ache behind those words. One evening, as gray clouds gathered above, rain began to pour suddenly and without mercy. Ethan, caught outside between their houses, dashed toward Liam's porch for shelter. "You again," Liam said, laughing, holding the door open. "Come in before you drown." Inside, they stood dripping on the hardwood floor. Liam tossed Ethan a towel, their fingers brushing. A tiny shock of contact passed between them. "You're soaked," Liam said, stepping closer to help dry the back of Ethan's neck. His hand lingered, warm, steady. Ethan's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, fragile. He turned slightly, meeting Liam's gaze. For a moment, neither moved. The rain outside was loud enough to make silence intimate. Then Ethan stepped back, forcing a smile. "Thanks. I should go before Daniel gets home." Liam's voice softened. "Of course." Ethan left quickly, rain soaking his shoes as he crossed the driveway. He didn't look back, but he felt Liam's eyes following him through the downpour. That night, Ethan lay beside Daniel, who had already fallen asleep. The sound of rain still echoed in his mind, mingling with the ghost of Liam's touch. He stared at the ceiling, heartbeat restless. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something dangerous, desire not for what he didn't have, but for what he wasn't supposed to want. He turned toward Daniel, watching his peaceful sleep, and whispered a lie to himself, "It's nothing. Just curiosity." But curiosity had a pulse now, and it refused to quiet. For days, Ethan tried to restore normalcy, to fold the edges of his life back into neat order. But normalcy had begun to feel foreign, like a language he once spoke but now struggled to remember. Daniel was preparing for another work trip, a weekend conference in Chicago. He moved through the house with the efficiency of someone accustomed to leaving, his suitcase open on the bed, his phone glued to his hand. "You'll be okay here?" Daniel asked, without glancing up. Ethan nodded. "Of course. Maybe you should invite someone over. You've been quiet lately." "I'm fine," Ethan said, though his voice trembled under the weight of its own lie. When the door shut behind Daniel that Friday evening, the silence that followed wasn't the same as before. It had depth now, echoes of things unsaid. Ethan wandered from room to room, restless, until a faint knock at the front door startled him. He opened it to find Liam standing there, toolbox in hand, a sheepish smile tugging at his lips. "Sorry to bother you," Liam said. "You mentioned your door hinge was loose. Thought I'd help fix it." Ethan blinked, uncertain whether to laugh or refuse. "You didn't have to, I wanted to," Liam interrupted gently. "Besides, it's Friday. I'd rather do this than eat takeout alone." Ethan stepped aside. "Then come in." Liam knelt by the door, working in quiet concentration. The sound of the screwdriver turning filled the air. Ethan found himself studying the curve of his jaw, the way his brow furrowed in focus. He caught himself and looked away, pretending to tidy the counter. When Liam stood, the hinge perfectly aligned, their eyes met again, too closely this time. "Thanks," Ethan said, voice low. "You didn't have to fix everything." Liam's expression softened. "Maybe not everything." A fragile silence stretched between them. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly, the first hint of a coming storm. They sat on the couch afterward, mugs of tea between them, conversation drifting toward the edges of honesty. "I envy you sometimes," Liam said. "You seem to have it all together." Ethan let out a hollow laugh. "Looks are deceiving." "Yeah," Liam murmured, "they usually are." Rain began to fall, tapping the windows in uneven rhythms. The lights flickered once, twice, before steadying. Ethan leaned back, eyes tracing the shifting shadows on the ceiling. "I used to think love meant safety," he said. "Now it feels like quiet rooms and polite words." Liam turned toward him. "Maybe love's supposed to change shape. Maybe it's not always safe." Ethan's chest tightened. "And what if you stop recognizing it?" "Then maybe," Liam whispered, "you find it somewhere else." The words hovered between them, heavy, electric. Ethan's pulse raced, breath uneven. When Liam's hand brushed his, neither pulled away. For a long moment, the world outside blurred, the thunder, the rain, the heartbeat of the storm merging with Ethan's own. He turned slightly, meeting Liam's gaze. It wasn't a question anymore. Their lips met softly, then deepened. Ethan felt years of restraint fracture beneath that touch, every lonely evening, every quiet dinner, every word he hadn't said. The kiss was not reckless but desperate, the kind that seeks not pleasure but proof of existence. When they finally broke apart, Ethan's hands trembled. "I shouldn't have," he whispered. Liam's voice was steady. "Neither should I." They sat in silence, the air thick with guilt and something dangerously close to tenderness. Ethan stood, pacing toward the window. Rain streaked down the glass like veins of silver. His reflection stared back, a man both seen and shattered. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said, almost to himself. Liam rose and joined him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "You don't have to know," he murmured. "Just be honest with yourself." Ethan turned his head slightly, close enough to feel the warmth of Liam's breath. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to stop everything before it became irreversible. But words failed. The quiet between them said enough. When morning came, Ethan sat at the edge of his bed, still dressed, eyes fixed on nothing. The storm had passed, but its residue clung to him, guilt, longing, clarity. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Daniel: "Hope your weekend's quiet. Miss you." Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. His thumb hovered over the keyboard but didn't move. There was no right reply for what had already changed. He set the phone down and whispered into the dim room, "It wasn't lust. It was the ache of being seen." Outside, sunlight returned, indifferent to what it revealed. The following days carried a strange, fragile calm. Ethan moved through them as if underwater, each action muffled, each sound distant. He woke early, brewed coffee, answered emails, spoke little. The world had not changed, but he had, and the dissonance between the two felt unbearable. He hadn't seen Liam since that night. Not deliberately, just the natural avoidance that comes when two people share something too raw to name. He thought about knocking on Liam's door, about pretending it hadn't happened, about apologizing for something he didn't fully regret. But each thought dissolved into silence. By Monday, Daniel was home. His return was unceremonious, suitcase in the hall, jacket on the chair, the faint scent of hotel soap and city air. He kissed Ethan's cheek, the gesture automatic, affectionate in theory but not in touch. "How was the trip?" Ethan asked, keeping his tone steady. "Busy. Exhausting," Daniel said, dropping onto the couch. "But it went well. You okay? You look pale." Ethan smiled, thin and unconvincing. "Just tired." Daniel nodded, already opening his laptop. The sound of keys filled the living room, rhythmic and safe. Yet to Ethan, it was unbearable, the same old comfort, heavy with absence. He excused himself, retreating to the bathroom. The door clicked shut, sealing him in. Steam from the shower fogged the mirror until his reflection vanished completely. For a moment, he welcomed it, the relief of not having to see himself. When the glass cleared again, he barely recognized the face that stared back, older, uncertain, guilty, alive. He whispered, "What have you done?" but the question felt hollow. It wasn't confession he needed, it was comprehension. That evening, he saw Liam again. It happened by chance, at the small grocery store 2 streets away. Liam stood in the produce aisle, sleeves rolled, a basket of apples in one hand. Their eyes met, and the moment stretched. Ethan felt the air between them tighten, 1,000 unspoken words rising and collapsing in an instant. "Hey," Liam said quietly. "You okay?" Ethan hesitated, searching for composure. "I don't know." Liam nodded as if he understood completely. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan." "I know." He paused. "But I owe myself something. I just don't know what that is." They stood there in silence, 2 men surrounded by ordinary noise, fluorescent light, and the weight of a single irreversible truth. When Ethan finally turned to leave, Liam didn't stop him. Back home, Daniel was waiting in the kitchen, dinner reheating in the microwave. "I thought you were working late," he said. "Just ran into someone at the store." Daniel's eyes lifted briefly. "That new neighbor? The painter?" Ethan froze. "You know about him?" "Small neighborhood," Daniel said lightly. "He seems nice." Ethan nodded, forcing a calmness that felt impossible. "He is." Daniel studied him for a moment, expression unreadable. "You seem far away lately." The words landed softly but cut deep. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth hovered, dangerously close to freedom and destruction all at once. "Are you happy?" he asked instead. Daniel blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are we happy, or are we just used to each other?" Daniel's silence said everything. His gaze drifted downward, weary, uncertain. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "Maybe we both stopped trying." Ethan nodded slowly, his chest tightening with something that wasn't quite sadness, more like surrender. They finished dinner in quiet civility, the kind that disguises fractures beneath politeness. Later, as Daniel read in bed, Ethan stood once again in the bathroom, under the same dim light, before the same mirror. The reflection was steady now, unflinching. He studied the man looking back, the one who had crossed lines and found, in the breaking, a strange kind of honesty that he thought of Liam, of Daniel, of the small, ordinary world that had begun to unravel the moment he felt seen. That he whispered, "The hardest part isn't what I did. It's what it revealed." The house was still. Water dripped slowly from the faucet, rhythmic and unending. Outside, night folded over Maple Lane, soft and indifferent. Ethan turned off the light, leaving the mirror in darkness.